eyes to the screen, soldier, now! That's the best intro I could come up with. Because this episode is Mudball. In this episode, Arnold and his friends are playing football in not Central Park when the 5th graders, our old nemesis, return and claim that they own the field. And Arnold, being bold, brave, and somewhat crazy, challenges them to a football match that'll determine who owns the park. And the 5th graders accept. And Arnold's like, you know what, maybe we could win this thing. We're smart. We have all these creative drills. We could probably beat them. But then Helga takes over and just decides that she's going to adopt the crazy drill sergeant attitude of work harder, not smarter. And everyone gets bent out of shape. Day of the game, they're failing miserably. Eventually, they're able to convince Helga to let Arnold, and the team convinces Helga to let Arnold take over as quarterback and run all their creative plays. And sure enough, they wind up outsmarting the bullies and win. And this episode really didn't have a whole lot to it. It was very straightforward, and normally I'd be okay with that if they was executed well. And there are some things I'll like in this episode, which I'll get to in a bit. But overall, this is one of those, I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it either. And if you're wondering what kind of held it back, well, there's two things that sort of held it back. For one, I thought Helga was a little too mean-spirited in this episode. I've talked before about how sometimes, it's coming from a place, Helga's mean-spirited, but it's coming from a place of sympathy where I can understand where she's coming from. Like in the diary episode, or just in general, a variety of episodes where they're usually pretty good about giving some insight into Helga's behavior and why she feels she does what she does. But this episode, they really didn't give a whole lot of insight as whether or not, if it was out of being raised this way by her father, because her father's very tough, very business-oriented, or if, she's just trying to hide the fact that Arnold has feelings for her, and if she sides with Arnold, it would make her look love. If any of those were the case, the episode really didn't make it a whole lot clearer, because she does sort of do that, my Arnold thing at the end once Arnold takes over the plays, and she's like, so heroic. But again, if any of that was the case, it was really unclear, and as a result, Helga came across as really shallow, and it didn't help that she was particularly grouchy. Like she was drilling the team like crazy, just shouting, forcing them to drink protein shakes, making them drill insane strategies. It just, oh my gosh, it was rough to watch her do that. The other thing I didn't like is that this episode was really straightforward. It's like 4th graders good, 5th graders bad, 4th graders struggle, 4th graders triumph, 4th graders win, end episode. And I would have liked something a bit more. Like when the episode ended, I thought, that's it? That's how we're ending the episode, just with them winning? Because, I don't know, I would have liked a bit more substance, maybe they have a tie, or they reach a stalemate, and they realize, you know what, winning's not everything, this isn't the answer, let's work tie, or maybe Arnold realizes that if they win, the 5th graders are just going to bully them anyway, so he forfeits the game. Something like that. Something a bit more in-depth than them win. Because it's just easy to have them win. It's a lot harder to be a win-lose, and I feel like that would have made for some good writing. But I think a lot of this just comes down to the fact that this is a 10, 11-minute episode, and in those episodes, you don't have as much time to play things out. I mean, I don't want to say that you can't do stuff in 11 minutes, because not comparing Hey Arnold to other shows, there have been some episodes where the show's been able to do amazing things with their characters in just 11 minutes. So I'm not going to say that simply having 11 minutes would have made this episode better, because again, it's fine. I really don't hate it. Those things I like are what hold it back. The reason why it's just another fine episode of Hey Arnold, and not like a great episode, not like another chip on the brick on the wall of why this is a really enjoyable show, which I think it is. But at the same time, I can't help But, you know, kind of similar to how Helga pushes the team to be better. I can't help but be like, good enough's not good enough. Like, I want this show to be better. And I feel like, well, not the show's better. The show's fine as it is so far. But if this episode wanted to be great, it needed to kind of go further in those areas. It needed, like, maybe 10 more minutes to just dive into, like, why Helga's so driven. Or 10 more minutes just to really just give us the time we need to have that more and morally gray win. Not morally gray win, but a more clear-cut win, a more reconciliation with the 5th graders. While I wasn't impressed with this episode, there were some things I did like. For one, I like how Arnold gets to become quarterback. I like how all the kids sort of rally around Arnold and they say, we're going to quit if you don't let Arnold play. And I thought, you know, that was pretty effective. I also like how for once Eugene didn't get hurt. Like, whenever he had the ball, I'm like, oh my god, oh no, Eugene's going to get hurt. Eugene's going to get hurt. And I like how whenever Arnold does his plays, like, Eugene never gets hurt. It's like, yes, Eugene not hurt. And there's also some fun callbacks to previous episodes that I enjoyed. Like, I like how they're training in the lot that they got back, I think it was in season 1. Like, it's cool that the lot that they turned into a baseball field, I love how that's their training area. I also love how the 4th grader who was held back joins the team. Like, I love how that came back. And it was funny how their plan when they brought him on was just, let's just pass it to him. That's the plan. And it's so ironic because in the basketball episode, that was the coach's plan, and everyone's like, it's stupid, we want to play, and in the football game, it's like, you know what, just pass it to him. And I love how in the first play, he, like, breaks his ankle. If you want to see this concept of characters being pushed to do straightforward plan, even though they know that they have a better plan in mind, I'd highly recommend checking out this. There's this Clone Wars arc there's a series of episodes in the show Star Wars, The Clone Wars, where the clones are fighting a battle on the planet Umbara, and their general is just making them push forward really hard when the clones are smart in this, and they know there's probably like smarter strategies they can employ to take out the bad guys. And that one I felt like was a lot, really delved into that conflict and really went into some interesting places. And I don't think it's on Netflix anymore, but if you can track that down, watch it. The next one is Gerald Moves Out. And in this one, Gerald's just sort of fed up with living with his family, from his parents telling him about the phone bill, I think. No, the electric bill. Father telling him about the electric bill. His little sister messing with his stuff. His brother hogging the shower. So he wants out. And he finds out that there's a room for rent in Arnold's house. So he decides to rent it. And Grandpa lets him rent it. And Gerald moves in, but he quickly discovers that living on your own isn't all it's cracked up to be. He has issues with the other boarders in the house, and eventually just decides to go back home. And this is another one of those spotlighting a character that is in Arnold episodes that I really, really like. Because, as you know, I've never been the biggest fan of Gerald on this show, particularly in season 1, because he was mainly just there to contrast Arnold. And one thing the season's been doing a really good job of, as I mentioned several times, is spotlighting characters besides Arnold and Helga and giving them their own episode to really delve into them, expand to them. And out of all the characters that have benefited from this, like Phoebe, like, I think Gerald's a character that definitely benefited from this choice. Because, again, character I wasn't big a fan of, but this is one of those cases where I do kind of connect with him. Like, for one, I kind of understand why he'd want to move out. We get an insight into Gerald's family, and we see that, you know, we get that middle child dynamic that Gerald has, having a younger sister and an older brother, which we've gotten bits of here and there, but I feel like this is the first time we're really, really, really getting it. Because we've never really had a spotlight episode on Gerald's family. We've seen them bits of before, but never like an entire episode. And you kind of understand it. Kind of is feeling stepped on by all sides. I think this also gives a bit more context to the episode where Arnold hangs out with the cool kid and Arnold mentions, well, you have a family. And when I saw that episode, I really didn't understand, like, what Arnold meant by that. But here I think we really get it, because Arnold, he has his grandparents, but he doesn't really have a family. He doesn't have a mom, a dad, a brother, or a sister. And Gerald has all that stuff. And rather than in being grateful, he just wants to move out. And I think that's very interesting, contrasting that to Arnold, who doesn't have all that stuff and wants it, versus a character who has all that stuff and doesn't want it. I'd be curious to see this explored in a later episode. Much later in the show, from what I gather, we do go into that depth of what happened to Arnold's parents and how Arnold coping with the idea of not knowing his parents or something, I forget. And overall, I really liked how the conflict between how Gerald's conflict played out. I like how Grandpa, while he's a crazy old coot, we do see that smart, serious, wise side of him in this episode, although he does admit to being a coot, where Gerald moves in, he realizes what Gerald's going through, that, he just needs to get away from his family, and realizes that I could fight him on this, but I think the smart thing to do would be to give him what he wants, give him space, and then within a couple days, he'll realize, you know what, I miss my family. Having a family is actually pretty awesome. I like how before running it by, he does call Gerald's parents and explains the situation to him and what his plan is. And again, it's one of those great moments of Arnold's grandpa. It's one of the reasons why he's one of my favorite characters, because, he has this kind of silly, kooky, goofy side, I'm the crazy old grandpa. But, unlike Arnold's grandma, who's just kind of this one-note, one-off character that works great in small doses, what works about Arnold's grandpa is that he does have this serious, wise side to him. I like how Gerald, quickly realizes the downsides of flat. It doesn't take him long before he realizes, there's lines for the bathroom, you have to do your own laundry. I would have liked this played out a bit more, because, again, I feel like certain things happen a little too fast. I feel like I would have liked a bit more, maybe Gerald, being happy, living in his flat for a bit, and then realizing it's not great, and then trying to stay home, persist, and then going back, because, it happens, but it feels very quick, and again, a lot of that's just because you're doing this in 11-minute episodes, but just in the first viewing, some of these turnarounds just felt a little too quick. I would have liked a bit more time on each of them. Then there's all the little things that I liked. I like Gerald's fantasy of having his own place, because we've had a lot of fantasy sequences on Hey Arnold, but a lot of them have been more dramatic and serious, and it was nice to have a luxurious one. Another thing I liked was when Gerald's in the laundry room, there's a sign of all the rules, and if you freeze frame it, there's some rules that are legit, but a lot of them are really silly and ridiculous. There's one about how you can't run around and have all your clothes in the laundry and go around in your birthday suit. And it's I like how they took the time to put all these details in there. Seriously, go back and freeze frame it. There are some really, really funny rules on there. So, that's all I have to say. So, if you want to share your experiences about living on your own versus living in your family or playing football, just please leave them in the comments below. Comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for my next Hey Arnold vlog, where I'm going to talk about another Gerald episode. Until then, take care. Bye.